They told you blood is thicker than water. They said family always comes first. But what if I told you that idea has trapped more men in silent suffering than any enemy ever could? What if I told you your worst enemy might sleep under the same roof, eat at your table, and smile at your downfall? This isn't just a video. This is your awakening. If you've ever swallowed your pain just to keep the peace, if you've ever walked away from disrespect because it came from your own blood, then this message is yours. Right now, your future is screaming for you to listen. Comment "No more silence" below if you're done tolerating the betrayal that hides behind smiles. For years, you've been told to be the bigger man. Keep your head down. Bite your tongue. Forgive and forget. But while you've been carrying the weight of keeping the peace, they've been chipping away at your soul. Stoicism isn't silence. Stoicism is clarity. It's the art of not letting emotions cloud your reason. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That doesn't mean allowing repeat offenses. It means recognizing who's destroying your peace and refusing to be like them. And if you're ready to truly take control of your peace, your identity, and your relationships, you need structure. That's why we created the Stoic Relationship Blueprint ebook for men, a no-nonsense, high-impact guide built for men like you. Not theory, not fluff, just clarity, boundaries, and action. This guide is now available to the public, but only for a limited time. We're keeping it exclusive to preserve its power and protect its message. Today, we confront 5 behaviors that no man, no matter how strong, loyal, or stoic, should ever tolerate. Not from friends, not from strangers, and especially not from family. Because tolerating them is not love, it's self-destruction. Number 1. Emotional blackmail is not love. You wake up and check your phone. There it is. A message wrapped in emotional chains. Guilt disguised as affection. After all I've done for you, this is how you treat me. And in a split second your heart drops and your day shifts from your path to theirs. You don't even realize it at first, but that string around your chest is not love. It's a leash. And every time you comply to that kind of message, every time you fold yourself to fit back into their script, you lose a little more of yourself, not because you're weak, but because you were never taught that love and control don't come from the same root. And while they tell you they're doing it out of care, the truth is that they're writing the rules of your life with hands that never had the courage to write their own story. You walk through your day like a ghost, second-guessing your moves because the voice in your head has started to sound like theirs. Every decision you make becomes a calculation. Will this upset them? Will this disappoint them? And slowly your life becomes a performance to please the people who hurt you the most, while calling it love. And that's the hardest part. It comes from those you've been taught never to doubt, the ones you're told to honor no matter what. But there's no honor in carrying pain that was never yours to hold. No pride in wearing shackles and calling it tradition. And as you stand there trying to understand why your accomplishments never feel enough, why you feel guilt when you say no, why you still crave their approval even when it poisons you, you realize you've been raised on emotional blackmail served as family loyalty. You were trained to apologize for your freedom, to shrink to make room for their comfort. But deep down you know something's wrong, because love doesn't manipulate, it liberates. And if it comes with threats and scorecards and silent punishments, then it's not love. It's possession. And a man who wants peace must see clearly, must draw lines even when it hurts, must understand that guilt is a tool used by the weak to control the strong. And no matter who it comes from, the price is always the same: your life, your voice, your path. And you were not born to live on someone else's leash. You were not made to bleed quietly every time they say you owe me. Because real love doesn't demand you die to keep others alive. It lets you breathe and become. And if they truly loved you, they wouldn't ask you to burn yourself to keep them warm. they'd step back and honor the fire within you. Number 2. Constant criticism isn't guidance. You share your idea, something that excites you, something that's been living in your chest for months, and finally found its way into words. And before you even finish, they roll their eyes, laugh, or say something that cuts deeper than they'll ever understand. You always do this, or that'll never work. And just like that, your spirit recoils, not because it's fragile, but because it's familiar. It's been there before. It knows this feeling of offering a piece of your soul, only to have it stomped on by the very people you thought were supposed to believe in you. And they hide behind their so-called honesty, claiming they're just being real, just trying to help. But deep down, it's not about you. It's about them. It's about what they couldn't do, what they never tried, what they gave up on. And your passion reminds them of everything they lost. So instead of healing, they choose to destroy. They speak with the bitterness of their regrets but call it concern. And the more you listen, the more you start to believe them. You start to question your vision, your instincts. You second-guess your voice, and suddenly the ideas that once lit you up now feel like burdens, and the joy becomes hesitation. Not because your dreams changed, but because you've absorbed the weight of their doubt. And the truth is, they don't hate your dreams. They hate that you have the courage to chase them, because every time you stand tall, it shows them where they've been kneeling. And no matter how they wrap it, in sarcasm, fake jokes, passive-aggressive silence, it's all the same. A silent war on your becoming, and you've got to see it for what it is, because guidance uplifts, it builds, it expands you. But this is sabotage whispered through familiar voices, and if you let them keep talking, they'll have you believing you're a failure before you've even begun. And that's where most men break, not in the world, but in the living rooms of their youth, where they were trained to expect rejection and call it reality, where they were taught that ambition is arrogance and confidence is delusion. But no more, because your life belongs to you, and your vision doesn't need their validation. It needs your persistence, your grit, and your unshakable belief in the unseen. And every time they try to belittle you, let it be fuel. Let it remind you that those who've never built anything will always mock those who do, because it's easier to destroy than to create. And you weren't born to seek permission. You were made to build without apology, and the world may not understand you yet. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're early, and you've got to keep going, even when the applause is absent and the critics live in your own house. Number 3, disrespect for your boundaries. You draw a line, not out of hate but from clarity, not to punish them, but to protect yourself, and they scoff like you've done something cruel, as if asking for peace in your space is an act of war. And that's when you realize that they were never comfortable with the real you, only the version they could reach into, twist, rearrange, the one who'd always fold to keep things easy. And the moment you start reclaiming your edges, their masks start slipping. Because for years you said yes when you meant no, laughed when you were hurting, showed up when your soul was exhausted, just to avoid the chaos they bring when they don't get their way. And that's not love. That's control masquerading as family. And you weren't put here to be a container for everyone else's chaos. You were made for order in your mind, freedom in your path, and peace in your presence. But the moment you start enforcing your space, your time, your energy, they call you cold, selfish, distant, ungrateful, because boundaries are like mirrors. They show people who they've been all along, and not everyone is ready to face that reflection. So instead of growth, they choose attack. They push harder, louder, nastier, hoping you'll cave. And if you're not anchored, you will, because disrespect often comes wearing the face of history, and it whispers things like, "But we're family," or "This is just how we are," or "Don't take it so personally." And for a while you convince yourself they're right, that maybe your needs are too much, maybe your standards are unfair. But deep down you know that every time you lower your boundaries, your spirit dims, your health declines, your creativity fades, and the man in the mirror gets quieter, until one day you don't recognize him anymore, and you realize that in the name of keeping the peace, you've abandoned the one person you were always meant to protect. And it hits like thunder. The truth that love without respect is just manipulation, and relationships without boundaries are prisons. And you don't owe anyone your suffering. You don't owe anyone access to your energy just because they share your last name or your childhood memories. You are allowed to be kind and clear, to love from a distance, to say, "This doesn't work for me," and walk away without guilt. And if they choose to leave because you've chosen yourself, let them go, because the ones who love you will never demand that you shrink to fit into their idea of who you should be. They will never attack your peace to protect their comfort. And every man must learn that the moment you begin honoring your boundaries, your world will shift. Some people will fall away, but what remains is the truth, the clarity, the space to breathe again, to build, to rest. And you will realize that nothing beautiful ever grows where your dignity is trampled. So protect your boundaries with the calm of a man who finally understands that saying no is not rejection. It's self-respect. It's the invisible fence that guards the garden of your peace. And without it, you will always be an open field for other people's chaos, a dumping ground for their dysfunction, and that is not your purpose. You are not here to be consumed. You are here to create, to lead, to love fully, but only when that love is mutual, clean, and grounded in truth. And when you begin to realize this, not just understand it intellectually, but feel it deep in your bones, something changes, not just in how you move, but in how the world responds to you. Because the man who defends his time, his peace, his space with quiet conviction sends a message that doesn't need volume. It needs presence. And those who used to walk all over you start hesitating, not because they suddenly respect you, but because they sense the difference in your energy, your posture, your refusal to play the old games. And yes, some will leave, some will throw tantrums, some will paint you as the villain in their fragile stories, because they can't control you anymore. And let them, because your role in life is not to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. Your job is to walk in truth, to hold your line, to water the parts of your soul that once withered under their chaos. And you'll start to notice that the more you honor your boundaries, the more clarity you gain in every area of your life. Your decisions become cleaner, your relationships more authentic, your energy sharper, because you're no longer leaking yourself into people and places that do not deserve access. And from that place of clarity, you begin to rebuild, not from anger, but from alignment, not to prove anything, but because it's who you've always been underneath the noise. And every time you say no without apology, every time you walk away without explaining, every time you choose yourself without permission, you reclaim another inch of the life you were always meant to live, grounded, unshakable, and truly free. Number 4, suppressing who you are. They didn't have to shout to make you feel small. They just had to look at you a certain way when you shared your truth. Raise an eyebrow when you laughed too loud. Frown when you dressed in something that felt like you. And so you learned, slowly and painfully, to trade pieces of yourself for approval that never really came. To edit your words, your choices, your soul, until what remained was a filtered version of who you used to be, safe enough to keep the peace, quiet enough not to rock the boat, and invisible enough not to trigger their discomfort. And the hardest part isn't that you did this, it's that you did it for love, for connection, believing that if you just softened enough, folded enough, they would finally embrace you, not realizing that real love doesn't ask you to vanish, it invites you to expand. But the people who raised you, the ones you called family, they taught you that your uniqueness was a threat, that your difference was a burden, that being fully you made them uncomfortable, so you clipped your wings and learned to walk instead of fly. and you convinced yourself this was maturity, that shrinking was wisdom, that sacrifice meant strength, until one day you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back, not because he was broken, but because he wasn't you. And the tragedy is not just in what they asked you to suppress, it's in what you agreed to give up. Your voice, your vision, your instincts, all buried under layers of expectations that were never yours to carry. And every time you tried to reclaim a piece of your identity, they pushed back harder, not with anger, but with guilt, with shame, with those loaded words like, "You've changed," or "Why can't you just be normal?" or "Don't you care about your family?" As if your growth was betrayal, as if your becoming was an insult. And that's when the truth hits, not like a slap, but like a slow ache. You realize they never wanted you. They wanted control of you, and your authenticity threatens the roles they've cast for you in their narrative. But you are not a character in someone else's play. You are the author of your own life, and every second you waste living someone else's script is a second stolen from your purpose. And if you don't break free, you will pass this cage on to the next generation, teaching them to fit in instead of stand out, to submit instead of rise, and the legacy of self-abandonment will continue, but not you, not anymore, because the day you decide to stop asking for permission to be who you are is the day you finally begin to live, and you will lose people, yes, but you will find yourself. And that is the only reunion that truly matters. Because when you come home to your truth, when you step into the fullness of who you were always meant to be, the world either adjusts or exits, and both are blessings. And the beauty of it all is that when you stop watering yourself down, when you stop dimming your light just to keep others from squinting, something inside you begins to rise that's stronger than shame, louder than guilt, more rooted than fear. It's the undeniable force of self-respect, the kind that doesn't need applause or validation because it's built from within. And suddenly the things that used to paralyze you, the judgment, the raised eyebrows, the subtle digs from people who never had the courage to be real, no longer matter, not because you stopped feeling, but because you started honoring your feelings above their comfort. And you realized that the only approval you ever needed was your own. And from that place you begin to rebuild, not just your habits or your choices, but your identity, brick by brick, value by value, piece by piece. And it's not easy, it's not painless, but it's honest. And there's something sacred about finally looking in the mirror and seeing the man you were always meant to be. Not the obedient version, not the agreeable version, not the edited version, but the real one, the one with scars and stories and unshakable conviction. And from that place you speak with a voice that doesn't tremble. You walk with a posture that doesn't beg, and you become a man who doesn't just exist to please, but lives to create, to lead, to love on his own terms. Because when you suppress who you are to be loved, what they love isn't you. It's a mask. And no matter how long you wear it, you'll always feel alone behind it. But when you show up as you, when you speak the truth, walk the truth, stand in the truth, the people who stay are the ones who see you and still choose you. Not because you're convenient, but because you're real. And that is the only kind of connection worth keeping. Number 5, guilt as a weapon. It doesn't always come with loud words or slammed doors. Sometimes it's quiet, the long pause after you say no, the sigh that makes you question everything, the passive comment over dinner. We just miss the old you. And suddenly you're shrinking again, not because they forced you, but because you were trained to feel responsible for other people's happiness, as if your role in this life is to carry the weight of everyone else's dissatisfaction. And so you do. You make the call you didn't want to make. You show up to events that drain you. You say yes when your soul screams no. Not because you want to, but because guilt wraps itself around your chest like a rope, tightening with every choice that puts you first. And the twisted part is they don't even see it. Or maybe they do. Maybe they've learned that guilt works better than anger, that it's more effective to say, "You've changed," with tears than fists. And either way, it pulls at you, gnaws at your mind, until your life becomes a maze of appeasement, walking on eggshells not to provoke disappointment. And if you're not careful, you begin to equate love with sacrifice, to believe that your worth is measured by how much you give up for others. And that is the most dangerous lie of all, because there is nothing noble about betraying yourself for the comfort of people who would never do the same for you, nothing courageous about abandoning your path to soothe someone else's fear of being left behind. And when you finally wake up to this, it doesn't feel like anger. It feels like grief. Grief for the time you lost, for the dreams you shelved, for the voice you silenced just to avoid guilt's suffocating grip. And it's in that grief that the truth begins to rise. The truth that guilt is not love, that real connection doesn't demand self-erasure, that those who weaponize guilt to keep you close are not protecting you, they're protecting their access to you. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start to recognize the patterns, the manipulation masked as emotion, the way they twist your loyalty into a leash, and you begin to realize that love without freedom is a cage. That family who uses guilt as currency is not family. They're captors with kind words. And from that moment on, your healing begins. Not with confrontation, but with clarity. Not with screaming, but with sovereignty. And you take your life back, inch by inch, day by day, not to hurt them, but to honor yourself. And every time you resist the urge to explain, every time you hold your ground when the guilt creeps in, you become stronger, clearer, more grounded in who you are and what you deserve. And eventually, the guilt loses its grip. Not because it stops, but because you stop listening, and you remember that you were not born to be an emotional caretaker for people who confuse love with control. You were born to be free, and the man who learns to reject guilt as a form of manipulation becomes unbreakable. Not because he's cold, but because he's finally awake. And when that awakening fully settles in your bones, when the haze of obligation lifts, and you begin to breathe from a place of self-ownership, not as a rebellion, but as a return, something in you clicks into place that was never broken, but always waiting to be reclaimed. And it shows up in how you speak, no longer explaining decisions that protect your peace, in how you walk, no longer hesitating between your truth and their comfort, and it shows in how you love, not from scarcity or fear, but from an overflow of what's real. And the people who truly love you will not try to own you. They will walk beside you, not behind you with expectations or in front of you with guilt. And you will notice that your relationships either deepen with mutual respect or fade with quiet resentment. And both are gifts, because your life was never meant to be a museum of sacrificed dreams. It was meant to be a declaration of who you really are. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, let them adjust or let them go. But never again dim your life to keep others from squinting, because guilt will tell you that love means sacrifice. But wisdom knows that real love never asks you to disappear. It asks you to grow, to be, to speak. And the moment you choose that, the moment you say no, not with bitterness but with resolve, you reclaim your birthright to be whole. And from that place, everything changes. Not just what you tolerate, but what you attract. Because a man who no longer carries guilt as a compass walks a path so steady that even the old voices of shame lose their power. And that's when you finally feel what freedom really is. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of alignment. If any part of this message hit something deep inside you, if it stirred a truth you've buried for years, if it exposed a wound you've been calling family, if it felt like I was speaking straight into the parts of you that you've kept quiet, then don't walk away from this screen like nothing happened. This is your call. This is the moment you stop being the emotional crutch, the guilt sponge, the invisible backbone for people who wouldn't break a sweat for your peace. It's time to reclaim your identity, your voice, your boundaries, not tomorrow, right now. The Stoic relationship blueprint for men isn't some feel-good fluff. It's the most brutally honest, practical, no BS guide for men ready to stop bleeding for loyalty that's never returned. It's already saving men years of pain, regret, and emotional manipulation, and it's linked right now in the comments. But it won't stay there forever. We are not keeping this public for long. This truth is powerful, and it's only for those ready to use it. So if you're ready to stop apologizing for your strength, for your truth, for being fully you, comment the Stoic Blueprint below. Grab the ebook before it disappears like this video, and subscribe so more men can find this and escape the trap before it's too late.